This token literally almost crashed Solana last year, but after a secret remodel, it's 20x its revenue. Let me show you the strategy. In this breakdown, I'll cover everything: the opportunity, the risks, the team, the price action of the token, how mining actually works, and the strategies real players are using right now. I've gone through tens of hours of code, data, and community research, and I'm condensing it all into one ultimate ore video guide so you don't have to. As you can see right now, the price of ore has shot up. However, there's a lot of stuff to actually unpack here, because if we change this from market cap to price, we see something completely different, but we will cover this as well. Now, before we get into the history, which is very important, I want to actually start at ore.supply and start allocating some SOL to mine the ore token. But I'm not going to go through it all right now. All I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to reset all of these rewards. I'm going to claim them all away, pull them out of there, and then I'm going to go to auto, and I'm just going to do something like quite small, 25 blocks for about 30 minutes. That's kind of maybe too small. I'll increase it a little bit. There we are. Deploy 0.75 SOL, and we'll come back to that shortly. Just before I segue into history, I just want to point out that this protocol is doing very, very well in terms of revenue. $200,000 in the last 24 hours. So there's plenty of hype and attention around it. And I imagine you've already seen it in Solflare or Phantom. It is currently number 2 over the last 30 days in terms of top sites in Phantom. So you've probably already seen it, but now I just want to make sure you fully understand everything about it. So Ore was launched in April 2024 as a proof of work cryptocurrency built entirely on Solana. It was designed so anybody could mine from a laptop or even a phone. No ASICs, no gatekeeping. The goal was simple: to create the Bitcoin for everyone on Solana. It was created by Hard Hat Chad, who is an anonymous dev. And now, also as part of the team, we've got Neil Shahani in charge of growth. When it launched, April last year, hype went insane. All shot up to around $2,000. It actually even went higher. But the mining frenzy, it basically brought Solana to its knees. There was crazy network congestion. It skyrocketed. Even $2 transaction fees couldn't push through transactions. We can see here on April 5th, the price was $2,000. And the launch happened on the 3rd of April. And you can see a wick almost around $10,000 on the 5th of April. And I actually covered it on the 5th of April in our analysis. So on the 3rd of April, it was started. But then on the 16th of April, 2 weeks later, Hard Hat Chad decided to pause all mining effective immediately. I believe this action to be in the best interest of Solana, all holders, and the fastest path forward to V2. Now, before we segue into V2, I want to draw your attention to August 8th, 2024, when Cal released this blog post. And essentially, this gave a new value, or not really gave a new value to all, but rather communicated it very, very well. Because Bitcoin, it was created as a peer-to-peer network, and then it became a means of storage, a storage of value, an SOV network. And this was to be done in a similar manner, except the goal was basically to have it as a store of value immediately, but to allow anybody to actually access it, and it ran on Solana. And what I liked about it, and what I think a lot of people liked about it, was that you are mining. You weren't physically mining with a pickaxe, but you're mining ore, or something that comes out of actual ground, as opposed to Bitcoin, which is a coin term. But this point here is very, very important. This is by mid-April last year. Ore's mining algorithm was too gameable, leading to mass spam that congested Solana. Because the token was a fair launch, so you just got in and you started mining, and because Solana already had a huge amount of attention, the Solana developer community went ahead and they just started mining the heck out of this, and then putting through all these transactions. And there was such an insane amount of spam that it actually forced Solana to upgrade in the weeks coming. So they did, in fact, relaunch. They came back with new tokenomics, a 5 million coin max supply, not the 21 million like Bitcoin, and a buyback and burn system. And since then, recently, the protocol revenue has surged 20-fold, and the game has completely evolved. Hard Hat Chad also won the grand prize in the Coliseum Hackathon, Renaissance Hackathon, which was in early May. And then by October, they had adopted Futagi from MetaDAO. This is something I'm very bullish on. I'm pretty sure you're aware of that already, though. Now, this is very relevant because the proposals, they go to the community and the community can actually make the proposals. So if this goes absolutely bonkers and gets really, really massive, proposals can come up to change things, to make things better. One proposal was trying to temporarily reduce the emissions by 40%. It did not succeed, and in the end, it was rejected. But there was another proposal that happened that was a pass, and that was $230,000 OTC, over-the-counter deal with Colosseum. So Colosseum wanted to invest in ore. And this, by the way, happened 7th of May. Now, this part is very relevant because the Solana Foundation is essentially funded in some way Colosseum. So Colosseum has the ability as an independent kind of company to go ahead and to create these hackathons and to onboard a whole lot of builders. And then they get to know the founders and the builders that really, really build. So generally, not always, but generally, they have a better gauge of who is a good or epic builder. So if somebody comes along and wants to do an OTC deal for $230,000 of your token for essentially a meme coin, then, I mean, that's a pretty big deal. Now let's talk about all that is happening today, because I knew what was happening with ore initially, and then I tried to do a tutorial, but everyone was busy, and then it got so complex that I kind of forgot about it. And then I had a little bit more interest, and I found out from a reliable source that there were some crack devs that were basically just running it so efficiently that they were getting the vast majority, the vast lion's share of everything. So it really wasn't going to work out for anybody really to learn. Until a week ago, this happened. All returns with a brand new mining protocol redesigned from the ground up to accrue protocol revenue, achieve sustainable tokenomics, and accelerate our mission of creating a Solana native store of value. So ore runs on the Solana blockchain. It doesn't have to generate all of its own infrastructure. It uses the infrastructure and security of Solana, but all by itself is a pretty clever idea as a store of value. This thread goes over everything, or use the proof of work system. And I just want to point out here actually that this made Solana basically unusable. And other blockchains were fighting this, of course. But the truth is, and I remember Hard Hat Chad actually saying so, he said, I could go and deploy this on your blockchain and it would be even worse. The thing is, there's no interest in most of these blockchains. So you could go and deploy it, and then there's no economic value to be generated there. So it wouldn't stall because no one's actually using your blockchain. Now this thread goes through the plan, but I'm going to take through the plan myself, so that's okay. But before we go into the plan, I just want to point out, I'm being super, super transparent here. The daily protocol revenue has gone crazily high, okay? So there's a lot more attention here. And of course, there could be some people, and there would be some people that were mining ore and gathering ore at a far lower entry, like $20. And now that ore is over $100, you always have to be aware that these tokens can have corrections. But more on that later. So the website is ore.supply. And the thing that I like is the fact that they've made it very, very simple. So they have an intro. It's super, super simple. It's a digital store of value play, but it's a community token and it's a meme token. And the supply is open to everybody. There's no bonding curve. There's nothing stupid like that. And they've got something easy that explains how mining works. I'm going to show it to you because it's visually better. But one thing I just want you to keep an eye on is essentially every minute there's one ore token that is actually created. It's minted by the program. And there's something called a mother load, which I'll explain. All you need to know is each round 0.2 ore is minted and added to that pool. And there's a 1 in 625 chance that that actually happens with that next mining block. And this I'll go over in a second as well. So let's have a look at this. I've got my tutorial wallet here connected, and every minute a round happens. You can see it's on round 37,913. The auto miner is what most people are going to use, but if you are a developer or if you've got some development skills, you can use the CLI. So what I'm going to quickly do is I'm going to stop the auto miner, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do it again. So I'm going to go auto. I've got 27 seconds remaining, and I do want to get in there, to be perfectly honest. And I'm going to go for 25 blocks. That means I cover everything. I'm just going to go for 30 rounds, something like that. And I'm going to deploy and approve. Get in there before that goes down to 0, which will become apparent in a second. So now with their open source randomness program, one of these blocks will win, this one. And if we scroll on down, we can see that all the miners shared this. And if we scroll on down further, you can see you or me. And this is how much ore I actually got and how much soul I actually got. 0.02475. Now, the way you play this is you can choose between 1 and 25 blocks. So as an example, if we put all of it into number 9, then we would be getting all of the soul from everywhere else, and it would come into here and we would be getting a really, really decent return. However, that's a 1 in 25% chance of you actually getting that. And statistically, you could, of course, lose quite a bit. So instead, it's quite common that people do pretty much all of the blocks. And what their goal is to try and get as much ore as possible. And ideally, they're trying to get one whole ore as opposed to just a share of ore. I'll show you this. We just need to wait for this to count down. It's deciding the winner. And there we are. Now, on this occasion, all of the miners actually shared the ore. And the more soul that you put up, the more you actually got. However, 1 in every 3 rounds, one person will get that ore. And the others, they'll get nothing. So I'll show you that as soon as it happens. Here is an example. This person here got the entire ore in this block. So they didn't even have the most amount of soul, but it was a bit of a lottery system and they got that 1 ore. That happens 1/3 of the time. Now, the other thing that I mentioned was the mother load. Each round, 0.2 ore is minted and added to the mother load. And this up here is a mother load. It's currently valued at $17,000. So this is a common strategy. When the mother load starts to get pretty decent, over 80, then more people will start to enter and enter and enter, hoping they'll be able to win this. Remember, it has a 1 in 625 chance of actually hitting. And when this hits, it gets shared based on your weight across everybody in that block, not just to one person. So this is what people really want to get. However, we don't know if it's going to go today, tomorrow, or 2 days from now. The next thing we'll cover is refining. There is a fee of 10% applied to all mining rewards when claimed. So the unrefined ore, we've got our soul rewards, we have our unrefined ore, and then we have our refined ore. So every time somebody goes ahead and claims this, they will take a 10% haircut on this, and it'll go to people that are not claiming this. So it's actually incentivizing that you don't claim, and then the longer you don't claim, the more you get. And then, of course, you're not selling, you're not adding sell pressure. So what you can do is you can just go ahead and just claim only soul if you want to. And it's pretty clear the net effect of this process is to redistribute tokens to longer term holders. However, there's also staking, but at present, the system of just not claiming it, that outperforms. If you want to do some staking, you just go to stake, and then you just go ahead and you deposit, and it starts to actually accrue some rewards. The current APR is 19%, but it just varies depending on how much volume goes through ore. The next thing to cover, tokenomics. 10% of all soul mining rewards are automatically collected by the protocol as revenue. All of the soul is used to buy back the ore token off open market. Of the ore that is purchased in the buyback program, 90% is automatically buried and 10% is distributed to stakers as yield. However, the next part, tokenomics, it gives us a better overview, but it is very genius. It's really got a whole lot of thought. One thing to keep in mind is, of course, there's a 10% fee. So one thing to immediately keep in mind is if you put in 1 soul for, say, 100 rounds, you're probably likely to get back around 0.9 soul. It just depends. Did you have the ability to make more with ore? Thus far, on one occasion, I did okay, and all the other occasions, I have lost. However, it's not actually just 10%. It's actually 10% plus 1% because 1% of all Sol deployed by miners is collected as an admin fee to support development, operations, and maintenance, which right now is very, very decent. It's very decent indeed. There's a couple of smaller fees, which is just normal as part of the Solana blockchain as well. Then we already covered this, but 10% of all ore purchased through the buyback program is distributed to stakers as yield, and 10% of all mining rewards are redistributed to other miners in proportion to their unclaimed mining rewards, which is just this section right here. So the fees to users are pretty decent. Now in Discord, I saw somebody said, if you're going to lose more than you make quite often, why would you go ahead and mine? And you can see there's 145 or thereabouts in each pool right now. Every minute, 140 or so wallets that are competing for this. And the reason why that would happen is because they're relying on getting the one. If they get that one, then if they get a few of those, they will outperform. If, of course, they just keep on getting a small split and they don't get lucky with that one, they won't. But the other thing is, when this goes, it's, of course, going to go to everybody in the block and not equally. But if there's, say, 200 wallets in there at the same time, and you own a good amount of the share, maybe something like 1%, 0.5%, well, then you're getting 1% or 0.5% of the mother load. And then in addition, if you keep your unrefined ore here and just keep it there and keep on going, then you're going to accumulate more of this ore. If you just want to buy it and sell it, do some TA, you probably don't want to get into the mining aspect. So just to repeat with the mother load, when this hits, everyone is splitting that jackpot in that block. Also, from our research, the mother load almost always hits before 125 ore. Now, of course, people know this. So when there's only 10 ore in the mother load, there's fewer miners. Sometimes you might see 40 or 50. And that means the payouts could potentially be in your favor. Whereas right now, I'm competing with 150 or so addresses for a share of trying to get that ore. So now let's go over the price action of ore. We're going to go over the recent price action because, of course, if we go back, we saw that it went crazy at $10,000. But essentially, it was not exciting for quite some time. And then they've gone and revamped the system and they've made it absolutely brilliant. And Coliseum is backing them far more. The community's thriving. It's popular in its own right, but I have the opinion that anything that's connected to MetaDAO in some form is going to become more popular because people are starting to realize that just normal governance with a token just doesn't work. So people are looking for solutions. So we see from the fib levels, it did this massive run up from here to here. And then, of course, it retraced. This is not financial advice, but like when something goes like this and it goes parabolic, it's pretty much always guaranteed to give up a lot of those gains. And on this occasion, you can just use your fibs. Right now, we've got some decent strength here, to be perfectly honest. But at the same time, it's only been going for a few days. But if you can work out a range that you like, then maybe you want to enter into Meteora. So now to pick the pool that you're after, you, of course, will need to know about Meteora. You can watch my Meteora videos as well. But what we're looking at is Ore in Sol and Ore in USDC. Now, there's more volume and more TVL going through Ore and Sol, but Ore in USDC is probably going to perform better just because Sol's so volatile. Here you've got two volatile assets. Ore in USDC is probably going to help you outperform a little bit better. Now, when I'm using Meteora, I like a token that's like 1 to 2% if it's a multi-day approach, like Meta as an example, or if it continues to gain a lot more traction. So your pools here, probably the best ones are going to be BinStep of 80 and 0.8. And you could go in here, but this is just going to use an arbitrage pool. It's not normally going to generate that amount in terms of a fee. And if we flick this to something like a 2-hour fee, it shouldn't be outperforming. It's not outperforming on the 2 hours. On the 12 hours, it was outperforming. So clearly there's a whole lot of arbitrage happening with this one. So you can jump in there. But if the Ore and USDC pools are also performing pretty well, I would probably jump into these ones. This one here, BinStep 50, 0.75, 1% is pretty decent. Change that to 24-hour. And well, you have to ignore that because that's not correct. But you can see that this is pretty decent. You're earning around 1.7, maybe 2% per day. Now you have to work out what system you want to do. So as an example, you might just be keen to buy the dip, something like this, a bid ask, and then work out where you want to bid to. Or you may want to go with something like this, where, well, there's very little ore here, but you could imagine it would go up like this, or just spot or curve. You can do whatever it is you want to do. For me personally, I like to keep things in range, so I'm always earning those fees. And if it's something I like, then I put the fees back into the pool. Now, the question you're probably wondering is, could this start to gather a whole lot of attention and do well? And I think so. Its market cap is 52 million. It has over 10,000 holders. There are people that use this every day. It's interesting. It's not memeable in the typical sense, but you could meme it. You could meme in terms of like mining or mining animations, something like that. It's kind of backed by Colosseum. We've got Anatoly retweeting things that it's doing because it's basically making Solana better. So it does have that potential. However, this is not a blind shield. That's why we've given you all the information. I just think if something goes up really, really fast, it tends to retrace. But at the same time, it has attention and it's really only sitting at a $50 million market cap. And it's probably doing a lot more in terms of educating people, getting people to become entry-level devs as well, to play around and tinker with some things and understand the value proposition of something like this. At the same time, there are people with $1 million worth of tokens, and they'll happily be DCing out of it or selling into volume. Now, let's just touch on the risks. We've got the first thing. It's open source. That is good. You can check out the repo if you know what you're doing. You can go through that. The second thing is the program is not immutable. It will become immutable after the audit is done, but the audit is not done at present. So how long that all takes, who really knows? The other thing to note is if that mother load becomes worth $60,000 or $100,000 or something quite sizable, right now it's $17,000, there is a possibility that validators will become malicious and try to game that system. We won't go into it too much, but essentially there is a way that they could slightly alter the odds in their favor if they're a bigger validator. However, that would be noticed, and of course, that would destroy the validator's reputation. By the way, I'm the general manager of validator.com. We would never do that. We don't do any of that stuff. And you should stake your soul with us. And now, in closing, I want to give you some community vibes because this might be of major interest to you and you want to dive into Discord. Let's have a look at Kenny here. She wanted to play this. So in the end, they lost 3.8K worth of soul. They gained 3K worth of ore. And then, you're losing money, right? She said, yeah, but I'm gaining ore and it's fun. And this is kind of like just the fact that it's quite fun. It's addictive. It's like the chance that you do really well. And of course, if you leave that ore there, you're going to get more ore rewards and whatnot. And, this is certainly a possibility. There are Bitcoin miners out there that run at a loss sometimes just because they think the price will go up. So it kind of has that vibe to it. And then also, if you're quite nerdy, you probably want to follow Andy from Magic Block. They went ahead and they bought an ore bot for research, and they've got some findings here, and they're probably going to go ahead and open source this, clean up the code, open source it so you can have a play around. But as more and more people come in, more tools will get bought. And then from there, who knows? Like this might actually start to gain a whole lot of traction. And also keep in mind that the team does get a decent amount of fees at present. They get 1% of the soul that goes through this. So they may have the ability to start a meme campaign or a video campaign or an education campaign or something funny, or who knows? So you are very early to it. So in closing, this is the story of ore. It's pretty wild, from almost crashing Solana to reinventing proof of work and to moving into kind of cool lottery system, producing real revenue and a loyal mining community. So in my opinion, ore is worth watching. By the way, make sure you subscribe and follow me for more deep dives. And one final thing, this is how my performance went. So it's been fun. However, I did not get a massive amount of ore. I was hoping for 1 point something. It just didn't happen, but it could have.